there before me was a second beast, which looked like a bear. It was raised up on one of its sides, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. It was told, "Get up and eat your fill of flesh." After that I looked, and there before me was another beast, one that looked like a leopard. And on its back it had 4 wings like those of a bird. This beast had 4 heads, and it was given authority to rule. Passages like this from Scripture always grip and challenge me. They're striking, no doubt, but sometimes difficult to see the significance beyond the spectacle of it all. It feels like reading something allegorical, like a myth or a legend, something passed down through forgotten ages. And yet, Scripture is much more than a myth. We know too much of its history to label it as a mere legend. And as I've read and researched these things from the prophet Daniel's visions, the veracity of evidence for these things having come to pass actually leaves me in awe. That's part of what I'm hoping to accomplish with this Biblical Bestiary series, to learn for my own sake first, but then to also lead others into the creatures and beings of Scripture that can seem veiled in mystery. In Daniel chapters 7 to 8, we read of 4 kings that would rise to power. These are 4 kingdoms that confirm the ancient prophecy, and Daniel witnessed them as a series of beasts that are arriving out of the great sea, and their appearances left him terrified and disturbed. If you've not seen it yet, I covered the first beast of Daniel's visions here, but in this entry of the Biblical Bestiary, I want to cover the second and third beasts together, because they convey a similar but profound message. The second beast is described as a mighty bear that's raised up on one of its sides and with 3 ribs in its mouth. And notably, it was told to get up and eat its fill of flesh. But what do all these details mean? When bears are mentioned elsewhere in Scripture, they're often associated with untamed power and ferocity, and sometimes as instruments of divine judgment. In Daniel's context, this bear represents the Medo-Persian Empire, which takes its name from Media and Persia that were active in Daniel's day, with Persia being the stronger of the two. The uneven power of Media and Persia explain the asymmetrical posture of the beast, which I've drawn with the bear raising one paw up high, ready to strike, and the other in a more supporting position. The ribs within the bear's mouth are understood to represent 3 military conquests by that empire, and are often understood to have been over Lydia, Babylon, and Egypt, with Daniel likely having lived to have seen at least the first 2 of these. And this brings us to the final part of the verse, where the bear is told to get up and eat its fill of flesh. But this raises 2 questions. One, of who is even commanding the bear, and 2, of why something like this would be permitted. Thankfully, there are answers to all of these things, but they'll become clearer as we look into the third beast. So let's do that now. This creature appears as a 4-headed leopard with 4 wings, symbolizing its speed and dominion. And unlike the bear, which rises in uneven strength, the leopard moves with an even, decisive force. This description, along with further explanations given in Daniel 8, link most accurately with Greece and Alexander the Great, who lived 200 some years after Daniel's vision. The 4 heads represent the 4 divisions of Alexander's empire after his death, split between Macedonia, Asia Minor, the Near East, and Egypt. But all of this is expanding our original question rather than answering it. Who is the authority behind these movements? Who's giving the command of these beasts to conquer like a bear and have authority like the leopard? To answer that, we need to go back to the beginning of the chapter. In verse 2, Daniel describes the 4 winds of heaven stirring up the great sea. And while this may seem incidental, it becomes more significant when we compare it with other passages where wind is associated with angelic beings. such as in Psalm 104:4 or Revelation 7:1, which describes angels restraining the four cardinal winds of the earth. One interpretation, then, is that it's God's angels that are calling to the bear of the Medo-Persians. And that would make sense because this is not the first time that God has used bears as a form of divine judgment, such as with Elisha and the bears. And while the leopard wasn't spoken directly to as the bear was, there seems to be a sort of thematic link between the winds that the angels oversee and the wings that the leopard was given to ride the winds to a place of authority. But whether it's directly God or his messengers that are addressing these beasts, you might feel a sort of tension, like I did, in thinking about a good God using violent nations as a form of judgment. But as always, we can take our questions and concerns of Scripture to Scripture. For me, it's been crucial to distinguish between God permitting evil and being the author of evil, which he is not. And this becomes a really complex philosophical issue. But to put it simply, God grants humans genuine freedom of will, and evil results from us using and misusing that freedom rather than from God himself. Secondly, God using flawed or even wicked individuals does not mean that he condones their actions or beliefs. And we can see this even in people that are considered as heroes of the faith. Noah, for example, struggled with drunkenness. David committed adultery and arranged an innocent man's death, and so on. And yet God still used them despite their flaws. In the same way, God uses larger historical and political structures, kings and empires, governments, and even wars. And this is not an endorsement of any of those systems by God, but to demonstrate that within his sovereignty, nothing goes to waste, and even human evil is eventually directed toward justice and restoration. The Medo-Persian and Greek empires may be no more, but our world today is no stranger to warfare and oppression. But we can take peace in knowing that whatever regime we live under, God works all things together for the good of those who love him. Thank you for joining me in this entry of the Biblical Bestiary. If this video blessed you, then consider sharing it with someone you think would also enjoy. I really want this channel to become a place where creatives can be equipped with both technical skill and also spiritual encouragement so that we can use our gifts for God's glory. In that, let me know what creatures of the Bible you would like to see next. And if you're willing, pray that God would continue using this channel for his purposes. And until next time, God bless and keep creating.